From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. The Trump administration has announced that it is reinstating all sanctions on Iran that were removed under the 2015 deal with the Obama administration. The sanctions will take effect on the 5th of November and will cover Iran's shipping, financial, and energy sectors. Meanwhile, France, Germany, Britain, and the European Union have condemned the move. President Trump's decision has sparked anger for citizens in Iran.
Honestly, I believe that these sanctions that Mr. Trump told that they're going to be back has a significant direct impact on people's life in terms of economy, medical care, and daily expenditures. So it's not that, in reality, it's not that it's not going to have any effect on people's life. So we are experiencing them since they were active like years ago, and we're still experiencing them.
Medicine is hard to come by because of sanctions. Definitely a person's life who is caring for a patient is affected by these sanctions. Sanctions decrease the quality of life as people now cannot obtain things they used to obtain easily before. It is obvious that it affects people as society is formed by people.
The first caravan of Salvadorian migrants has reached the Guatemala-Mexico border. Mexican authorities are allowing the group of about 2,000 onto the bridge at the border for processing. Migrants want to be processed swiftly so they can proceed as they're suffering from exhaustion and hunger. Some say Mexican authorities have offered them asylum, but they want to reach the United States.
They won't let us through, and the children are hungry. They cannot do this. They have to open the gates. Because we are a caravan of people and children are going to dehydrate.
Mexican authorities are proposing giving us shelter, which we don't need because we want to reach the United States. We don't want to stay in Mexico. We want them to let us pass through the country. We don't plan to stay in Mexico.
But many members of the caravan have decided to cross the Suchate River on their own. As was the case with previous caravans, they view authorities with suspicion and as a threat, trying to obstruct them. So they have chosen to bypass the slow immigration process to continue advancing. After making inflammatory comments earlier in the week about the troops needing to fight back against the incoming migrant caravan, US President Donald Trump has now backtracked his statement. He also blasted the US immigration system, calling it stupid.
No. But if our soldiers or Border Patrol or ICE are going to be hit in the face with rocks, we're going to arrest those people. That doesn't mean shoot them, but we're going to arrest those people quickly and for a long period of time. Everything we're doing is totally legal. It's all gone through the courts, but we have one of the few systems where instead of telling people you can't come in, we take them in and we have to bring them through a court system. It is the most ridiculous system in the world. It's obsolete, but that's not the problem. The problem is it's a stupid system and it doesn't work, and the Democrats and the Republicans could change it immediately. We could do it in one day, we could have it fixed, but the Democrats don't want to do it because they're playing politics.
Some of the 15,000 troops promised by Trump have already begun deploying to the border. A number of former defense officials say that the president's instruction to shoot at stone throwers violates the Army rules of engagement. Our correspondent in Mexico, Pablo Perez, is with the second caravan of Honduran migrants in the Mexican state of Chiapas and brings us this report.
The migrant caravan started out very early in the morning. They are now walking on the road between Huixtla and Mapastepec in the state of Chiapas, a journey of approximately 57 kilometers. This is a long way. That's why they began so early. This is a more compact route because in the previous days, federal police arrested some migrants and they don't want this to happen again. The group plans to stop and sleep in Mapastepec as they keep heading north, following in the path of the first migrant caravan.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute. Welcome back. Countries across Latin America and the Caribbean are celebrating the Day of the Dead. Giving offerings is an important part of these celebrations in Mexico. They're placed in public spaces and houses as an ancestral tradition.
The students killed 50 years ago in what is known as the Tlatelolco Massacre have been honored with this offering at Plaza Santo Domingo.
UNAM has organized this tribute to commemorate the young, brave people who changed the history of our country.
This is a tribute made by students to condemn all the brutality and police abuse during 1968. It is outrageous that people behind those crimes are not in prison.
Every year, the 1968 student movement takes part in these ancestral rituals, which are an expression of Mexican culture.
This is something that is taught to us since we are born. When we are kids, we place the offerings with our grandmothers. This is a very nice tradition.
At the end of October, many houses, schools, museums, and public square place their offerings for the Day of the Dead, the most important tradition of Mexican culture. In the University of the Claustro de Sor Juana, the offering was dedicated to famous poet Sor Juana and Mexican icon Frida Kahlo.
There were two strong women who fought for freedom, for women's rights, for access to education, and for freedom of speech. We pay tribute to two exceptional women.
This pre-Hispanic tradition commemorates all the people who are no longer with us.
Each one of us are part of this tradition. Each one of us have different perspectives about what death means.
The ritual goes beyond offerings. There are parades for the Day of the Dead, decorated with skulls and even the popular Catrina, which symbolize the presence of death in our lives.
Haitians honor the Day of the Dead in a great festival which takes place during the first 2 days of November. This is the Haitian version of the Day of the Dead with a twist to celebration voodoo. Surrounded by skulls, incense, and ritualistic chants at the capital's main cemetery, thousands of voodoo practitioners visit graves to honor their ancestors and pay tribute to the Haitian god of the dead. Celebrants spray a black cross with rum and leave offerings to ancestors to return home from a visit. And in many regions of Bolivia, citizens have been welcoming the souls of the dead with parties and feasts.
They wait for their dead with parties, music, and a lot of food and drink. They've come a long way, so they are tired, hungry, and thirsty. In these rural highlands, the Aymara priests summon them with a song.
Amay Wawita, where are you? Where have you been? Where have you gone to work? I tell you to come. The Amaura is calling you.
They set up shrines that feature the Tantawawas, the Aymara word that means children of bread, which represent the deceased. There are also horses, star, the sun, the moon, the stars, all made of bread, and all things that will help them to return and live again.
Every 1st of November, we recite at noon our souls. We have them the whole afternoon and until noon the next day. When we stand enough, we go to the cemetery to pray and we make our souls go away happy because we put everything they like on the table.
In Aymara culture, death is only the passage to another dimension.
We are in a constant relation with the dead. It's not that they die and that's it. In the Aymara world, there are 3 dimensions. The Acapacha, where we are, the Mancapacha, with all the resources below the ground, and the Alajpacha, that it's above and has nothing to do with heaven or hell.
This is a party with several stages. These include preparing the food, the symbols made of bread, choosing the best fruits, making the drinks, and choosing the sweets and decorations. The whole family is involved.
I always tell my children about this custom. They have to keep this tradition alive in the future, because if we don't talk to them about it, they won't. And this custom that has arrived from abroad, Halloween, is not good for us. For me, it's not good.
The reunion lasts 24 hours. At midday on the 2nd, they say goodbye to the souls with music. The plentiful food is taken to the cemetery and shared with those who say a prayer for the soul of the deceased.
And residents of Los Angeles in the U.S. celebrating the Day of the Dead spoke against U.S. President Donald Trump's policy on the migrant caravans heading to the States.
I don't think it's right to use them as a bargaining chip. Everybody has the right to come here. We are all from immigrants. We are all immigrants from different countries. And that's what makes United States great, you know, because there's a lot of influx from different countries, different culture, and we are all diversified, which is great. And that makes America great.
A strong earthquake has hit Chile, but no injuries have been reported. The 6.2 magnitude quake hit several regions in the north of the country. Landslides blocked roads in the city of Iquique. Structural damage to roads and buildings have been reported, but no one has been injured. Brazil's president-elect Jair Bolsonaro has once again said he will move Brazil's embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
If our capital is changed from Brasilia to Rio de Janeiro, what's the big deal? Other countries would simply bring their embassies here. I do not see what's wrong with moving our embassy to Jerusalem. It's not a life or death situation. We greatly respect Israel and the Arab people. Brazil is a peaceful country where everyone can live in peace.
Fighting between the National Liberation Army ELN and the Popular Liberation Army EPL is causing people to flee en masse in the Catatumbo region of Colombia. At least 60 families were displaced from their homes after fighting between both groups restarted on Thursday. Violent clashes have reportedly left at least one dead and many more injured. Authorities believe at least 50 civilians were caught in the crossfire. The mayor of Montevideo, Daniel Martinez, has visited workers from the gas union who have been on hunger strike for the last 17 days in Uruguay. The strike started when Montevideo Gas fired 21 workers as part of a company restructure that could lead to more layoffs.
Situations like this hunger strike will always awaken our solidarity. We have great concern over the uncertainty these workers are going through. Despite talks with the company and attempts by the government to intervene, the situation is not changing. Still, we will do what we can to help.
It's been 15 months since the disappearance and death of Santiago Maldonado in the province of Chubut in Argentina. The documentary about him, called Santiago's Way, has screened at the National University of La Plata 100 times.
15 months have passed since Santiago Maldonado disappeared, an incident that's etched in the hearts of Argentines, and that's reflected in the documentary Santiago's Way.
There are difficult times for Argentina and for Latin America. We need to come together and share our culture. We have used cinema as our canvas to raise this topic, to tell Santiago's story, a story that remains an open wound for Argentinian society.
A whole crew came together to tell a story that's full of unanswered questions. The documentary's popularity has surprised those who made it. The film is in opposition to the mainstream media, who haven't been clear about the motives behind Santiago's death.
There is no doubt Santiago's case amounts to a forced disappearance that happened under Mauricio Macri's government. The mainstream media's reporting has been highly doubtful. They continue to say to this day that Santiago Maldonado drowned.
Over 40,000 people have watched the documentary across 100 screenings in movie theaters, trade unions, and universities. The interest led to a conversation about the 49-day disappearance and death from this artisan from the Mapuche community, who suffered from police repression.
This is an important artistic expression. It's a major work of investigative journalism that condemns the ongoing crimes of the government. It points a finger at government impunity in the case of Santiago Maldonado.
This was a forced disappearance. This tragedy won't remain as a question mark with no answer. It uncovers the type of regime we live under.
The hegemonic media and their journalists have become facilitators for this crime. This was a political killing.
Human rights organizations and social movements hold Mauricio Macri's government responsible for the death of Santiago Maldonado. In a country that has seen over 30,000 people disappear, Santiago's way leaves many unanswered questions.
Un rumor comenzaba a sonar en la Patagonia.
The Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency has donated computers and $70,000 to the Turks and Caicos Islands, this in the wake of Hurricanes Irma and Maria. 88 laptops were presented to the Ministry of Education. The monetary donation will contribute towards the development of the Education Management Information System. The donation is part of the Legacy Project aiming to improve the conditions of the most vulnerable people in the most badly affected areas. Guyana's president is in Cuba for 2 weeks of a series of medical tests. Despite having received a clean bill of health back in May, he started experiencing symptoms which forced him to get a second checkup.
At that time, they discovered some symptoms which needed further investigation. So I just agreed with that diagnosis and made arrangements to go to Cuba for further investigation. At this time, there is no clear indication of disorder or what the nature of the disorder is. It's a question of investigation. And I think I can get the best advice in Cuba.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. The Cuban president has met his Russian counterpart at the start of a 3-day state visit to Moscow. Vladimir Putin welcomed Miguel Díaz-Canel to the Kremlin. They talk about strengthening economic ties. Trade between the two nations grew 17% last year. This is Díaz-Canel's first visit outside the Americas since he took office.
With this visit to the Russian Federation as President of Cuba, we are ratifying the continuity of the Cuban Revolution's relationship with Russia.
Our correspondent in Moscow, Hansel Oro, is following the Cuban president's visit.
The
President of Cuba's Council of State, Miguel Díaz-Canel, has now met President Vladimir Putin in the Kremlin. Putin talked about the need to keep on deepening the strategic relationship between the two countries in various areas. He also talked about the deep friendship between the two peoples, which of course has a long history, and the need to help Cuba's industrialization. For his part, Díaz-Canel condemned the unilateral sanctions imposed on Russia by the United States, as well as NATO's encroachment on Russia's borders. Putin stressed the need to respect the self-determination of Cuba and other countries. A number of other Russian officials spoke specifically against the U.S. financial and economic blockade of Cuba. Yesterday, of course, the United Nations voted overwhelmingly against the blockade by 189 votes to 2, giving a resounding victory to Cuba and all those who support it. Díaz-Canel also met the leaders of the Russian Communist Party and delivered a message from Raúl Castro. Another important issue here is the growth of Russian tourism to Cuba, with more than 100,000 Russian tourists currently visiting the island every year. Working groups between Russia and Cuba have already reached a number of agreements on metal production, oil and energy.
As Hansel mentioned it, Cuba won a monumental victory in the United Nations General Assembly on Thursday.
The second day of the debate saw a vote that once again isolated the United States within the international body. Washington, D.C. must now face the demands of nearly every country that voted in favor of lifting the blockade on Cuba. Their message was clear: the economic blockade must end.
The result of the vote is 189 for, 2 against, and 0 abstentions. Resolution A73L3 is approved.
Abstenciones, 0. Most of member countries reserted their support for Cuba and rejected U.S. attempts of manipulation.
The U.S. government manipulates and crudely politicizes the world's demands for human rights. They do the same for any amendment presented in this stage, in order to switch the focus of the resolutions against the blockade. They do this to create a pretext in favor of the blockade and to gain a supposed international endorsement in order to force more sanctions against our people.
Following mass condemnation of U.S. manipulation, Cuban Foreign Ministry, Bruno Rodriguez, stated that the blockade amounts to genocide under the 1948 Genocide Convention.
Son incalculables.
We can't count the number of human victims that this blockade has left. This is a genocidal act by the US, under subsections B and C of Article 2 of the Prevention and Sanctions Resolutions Against Genocide of 1948. It is even a violation of international humanitarian rights.
Una violación del derecho internacional humanitario.
Rodriguez also remarked the U.S. has no moral authority to criticize neither Cuba nor any other country when it comes to human rights.
El gobierno de los Estados Unidos.
The United States government has absolutely no moral authority to criticize Cuba or any other nation in regards to human rights. We reject their repeated manipulation with political ends and their double-speak of the government that has committed countless human rights violations. They have used nuclear weapons against civilians. They are the biggest producers of weapons of mass destruction. They proliferate armed races. They try to militarize cyberspace and create espionage networks across the world.
Es el que desarrolla armas de exterminio en masa.
Over the last 26 years, Cuba has received a great deal of support from UN member nations in their effort to lift the economic blockade. And on Thursday, yet another diplomatic blow was dealt to the White House when their anti-Cuba amendments seeking to consolidate support for the blockade were all rejected. Cuba is fighting to end the attack on its people and has the support of the international community.
Now it's time to bring you some other stories from around the world.
Catalan's regional president, Quim Torra, is calling for charges against 9 imprisoned Catalonian leaders to be dropped. They are in jail due to their role in the push for independence last year that was banned by the Spanish government. Spain's public prosecutor is looking for sentences of up to 25 years on charges of rebellion and misuse of public funds. The state attorney, however, says rebellion charges should be dropped in favour of sedition to reduce sentences to 12 years. The lesser charges are part of the government's efforts to reduce hostility between Madrid and Barcelona. Russia is ready to help Cuba modernise its economy. In a joint news conference with the Cuban president Miguel Díaz-Canel, Vladimir Putin said he would build a ground station in Cuba that would allow it to tap into Russia's GLONASS global navigation satellite system, the equivalent of a GPS system.
Preparations are underway in Cuba to install the Russian GLONASS system. As a result, our Cuban partners will obtain many technical possibilities, such as global positioning systems, satellite, and telecommunication services. I underline that altogether, Russian business is ready to participate actively in the large-scale modernization programs of Cuba's national economy.
According to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, while the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi is regrettable, he claims stability in Saudi Arabia is vital to global security. Speaking at the Kraver Forum in Bulgaria, he continued to insist that Iran is the larger threat and must be blocked as it allegedly poses a threat to Europe.
At 118 years old, a Bolivian man and woman may be the oldest people alive. Zenon Vilca Flores was born on August 21, 1900. Could be the oldest male ever to have lived. His compatriot, Julia Flores Colque, was born on October 26, 1900. Celebrated her 118th birthday at a party that was organized by the municipality of Sacaba. Mama Julia, as she is fondly known, is reportedly in good health. And we come to the end of this news brief. These and many other stories you can find on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.